Kenneth Burke is a renowned theorist known for using cluster theory. He is pictured here. Cluster theory is the use of keywords and symbols and how they relate to other words and symbols throughout the artifact. Cluster theory helps provide insight into worldview and perspective. Cluster criticism is used to dissect an artifact by searching for certain keywords and communication devices and how they are arrayed or clustered. Use of certain words and phrases has the evocative effect of portraying the speaker in a certain way to his/herself and to the audience. The use of specific terms or words serve to deflect the thinking of the audience away from what the writer does not want the audience to think, and instead paints a picture that the writer believes and wants the audience to believe as well. Burke states that clusters are not something of which the speaker is usually aware of. For this reason, clusters can in fact be useful in revealing the true nature of the speaker.
Cluster theory step by step. Selecting an artifact must be appropriate for the method and have enough data to work with. For example, for cluster theory, it's best to pick something longer, like a song or speech, instead of something short, like an advertisement or a poem. Analyzing the artifact. Identifying key terms. When it comes to selecting key terms, you should focus on nouns based off of their intensity and frequency within the artifact. Next, you want to chart the terms that cluster around your key terms. These clustering words and phrases can be any type of word that is in close proximity to the key term or relates to the key term. Finally, you want to discover an explanation for the artifact. You should come across some kind of pattern or notice something interesting between the relationship of your key terms and their clustering terms. By looking into this, you can gain some insight about how the writer feels about certain ideas. And with that, let's dive into our artifact, A Day in the Life by the Beatles.
He/man was chosen because it is a noun, as well as it is repeated throughout the beginning of the song. The writers of the song, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, were close personal friends of Tara Brown, of which this song is about. Anytime they mention he or man in the song, they refer to Brown. Brown was the heir to the Guinness fortune, and the song was inspired by him after his fatal car accident in 1964. Lennon and McCartney referred to Brown as a lucky man because of his fortune, and how he blew his mind out in a car, referring to Brown's accident, as well as how McCartney felt after hearing about Brown's fatal demise. Lastly, he is connected to place, meaning that people recognized Brown but couldn't figure out who he was.
One term that I found multiple times in the song is news. The first phrase that I found following news is, "Oh boy." It shows that something chaotic has happened, but not something that Lennon is actually taking seriously or not dwelling on. This part of the song is referring to the Guinness heir Tara Brown, who died in a car crash in London and was a friend to John and Paul. The line, "and though the news was rather sad, well, I just had to laugh," further confirms his amusement and lack of empathy to the news story. This kind of adds to the idea that life goes on. In today's society, we see so much news and media that we are desensitized to the tragic stories on the news. The line, "I'd love to turn you on," implies something sexual, but also indicates turning on the news.
We chose the word people, considering it's a noun, but more so because of its frequency. The term people is followed by the verbs stood and stared. This is referring back to Tara Brown in the car accident. This is showing people are willing to look at something tragic and gruesome. The next line of the song uses a cluster of words, seen as faced before. Being of the House of Lords, people stood and stared, even more, thinking to have known who was in the accident. The second use of people is followed by the terms turned away. The line before describes how the British won the war. People turn away from the success of ending the war. This analysis implies that people's attention is more interested in the chaos of the world and staring. When the chaos is ended, they turn away and move to something else.
The last key term is I, which is found throughout the entire song. I decided to break down I by verse. In the first verse, we have I clustered with red and oh boy. Then we look at the last line that has I clustered with laugh. This section indicates that he feels like he had to laugh despite reading how sad the news was. Then we have I clustered with saw, film, and oh boy. He explains that people turned away, but then I is used again, followed by the verb look. This is indicating that he is so appalled by the war that even though everyone else is ignoring it, he can't turn a blind eye. The verse ends with, I'd love to turn you on. I is clustered with love and turn you on. The entire verse, post-instrumental break, uses I. The most important I in the verse is when he says, everybody spoke and I went into a dream. I is clustered with went and dream. I found this wrapped up the song very nicely. The last I found in the song is stating, I'd love to turn you on once more at the end. The whole perspective of the song comes from I. When breaking down the clusters of words, you can see that his perspective is rather negative to the world displayed around him. This correlates to where he says, everybody spoke and I went into a dream. You can indicate that from the way he felt about the prior instances that were happening in the world, that when people spoke, he wanted to enter a dream, or rather, escape. This leads to the I'd love to turn you on quote. Timothy Leary had a quote that states, turn on, tune in, drop out. At this time, this could mean that we need to drop out of the material world around us and tune into our inner selves. By using the cluster analysis, we were able to dissect that and conclude a deeper meaning of a day in the life.
In summary, we examine cluster theory through our artifact, A Day in the Life by the Beatles. Cluster theory is important because of the relevancy that it can be used in today's world. It detects the true meaning of what the writer is trying to say, and all clusters can be revealed through the subconscious.